Hi there. We're with Marisol Menendez. We can describe her in several words. I've been trying to get in touch with her for a while, and she's been busy. I know we talked about this. She is an open innovation consultant, advisor, ecosystem, and connected innovation enthusiast. We call her a dreamer, which is more sincere on our part. And we'd like to ask you a few questions about open innovation and the toolkits you're working on and your experience in an international area. But first, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe update the Turkish audience on that?
Thank you very much, Attila and Baran. Thank you for the warm welcome and thank you for the invitation. I'm always excited to talk about open innovation, because as you say, I also feel that I'm a dreamer like you guys, but moreover, I'm passionate about open innovation and what innovation in collaboration means. So I think that even if it didn't have the name open innovation, I've been working in innovation in collaboration all my life. And suddenly I realized that we were doing was that bringing knowledge and creating the right kind of bridges to create something better from collaboration. And so this is my passion. As I said, I worked for BBVA from more or less for 15 years or 14 years, the last 6 of them as head of open innovation. And so I discovered there the concept, and then afterwards I decided to go and explore multi-sector, multi-country, multi-player innovation all around the world. And so I'm just doing that right now, making sure that we can learn more about open innovation.
Well, let me add a few words, if you don't mind. I think one thing that you mention a lot in your blog and in your website is you are a curious person. And that's a common value that we share. Well, we've been doing open innovation in the Turkish market quite a while now. Our experience dates back to 2016, but you go a few more years than that. Open innovation requires values like collaboration, transparency, trust, which are tough values, and they're the new values of this generation and era, let's say. But these are not the, let's say, familiar words in the financial system and the business practices that we have grown up with, that we're accustomed to, maybe even a little bit on the opposite side. But today, something's changing. Lots of things are changing, and the business world is intrigued with the outputs of open innovation, how startups can disrupt markets, how collaboration can lead to real, scalable, fast, and mature solutions. But the open innovation core values are still under questioning. Can we be a successful corporation doing an open innovation campaign while collaborating with our, let's say, other parties, people outside of our sacred entity, sacred limits? And conflicts like that, behavioral change, and lots of things are under question. Another important dynamic is that there is a growing consensus in the world that we cannot address the increasing innovation requirements of today and the ever-changing customer needs of the tech era, the VUCA era, where volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity is like a daily thing, and we cannot tackle it on our own. So this is a good thing. People are realizing that we cannot do it all our own, but again, there is a conflict. It's like a transition stage right now, and maybe people like us are building bridges from another way of thinking to another one. So the transition stage requires a lot of effort, and you have a lot of experience in that area. So you're working with South Summit, NFI, different cultures. What is your experience tell you about this transition stage, and how was your experience doing open innovation with so many different international partners?
Well, yeah, I think you're right. No, there's a challenge in find the right way to collaborate, and I think this is all this conversation is about that. No, there's a saying that I like a lot, and I use it everywhere, which says, by the way, I was walking one day in the SAP offices in Germany, and they had this sign in the door. It was a red door with a printed out sign that said, the most important innovations will come not from new technologies, but from new ways of collaboration. And when I read it, I said, "This is it. Now, this is what I think." Of course, technology is important, and nowadays we are living everything technology, and we're talking about all kinds of digital solutions, transformation, digitalization in all industries, globalization, connection, artificial intelligence. Of course, that matters because that brings a speed to what we are doing right now. But in the core of that, the limitations of collaborations come from how we can connect as human beings. And it's all humans, it's not the company A with the company B. Well, it is, but the company A and the company B are people. How we are creating the dynamics of collaboration is with people. And so sometimes I get to the conclusion that it seems that innovation is a humanistic profession, you know. So even though we are so immersed in technology all the time, we are talking about humans. And the good thing about this is that we've been humans for long, no, as a community, and collaboration, connection is what is the unique brand of us as a species for evolution, for the transformations that we've been living for ages. So the collaboration thing, we have it in our genes, you know. And the thing is that, of course, with our culture, the dynamics of the community, we need to understand how to bring everything forward, and also considering the complexity of the speed, as you were saying before with the book environment. So my first call to action here will be like, let's not get too distracted by technology, no, and realize that the core of everything is between people. You know, we trust each other, we begin building this trust, and trust is not something that you just get one and zero, you turn the switch on. It's like love, no? Well, maybe you can, guys, but not everybody can just say, well, you're my lady and I conquered you and we love like this, no? You need to begin to create the relationship through time, and that's because it's a human nature. This is about that, like to find the right patience, the knowledge, to dedicate time, the understanding, and make sure, without getting blinded by technology, realize what's underlying in these connections, why we're trying to connect, what's the strategy, how are we measuring the way we grow into the connection and collaboration. And I think that's what's underlying in the core of everything. Of course, when you talk about innovation and collaboration, you don't need to say, well, because we're collaborating, we share everything. So the exercise is also not one and zero in that sense. You can begin collaborating a bit and get to know each other, and this will grow. And also within organizations, people need to learn how to connect things that are unconnected, you know, and to build these bridges and grow through that.
Marisol, it was really interesting that you said it's all about human connection. And as humans, we've been connecting with each other for a while at personal level, at emotional level, also at the intellectual level. Sometimes it can be difficult for people to trust each other, like you said, or love each other, or be able to communicate openly with each other. But when we talk about open innovation, we actually it's a bigger challenge, because yes, human connection is important, and at the end, it's human to human connection that matters. But those people are most of the times representing an organization. An organization is a collective, and sometimes I think that could be more difficult to connect, because most of the time there's not a single person who can be deciding, talking on behalf of the corporation as a whole. So it's a bigger challenge to build the company connection on top of the human connection. But I suppose that's where the methods and the key questions and the key challenges come into play. How do you make sure that the human connection can be translated into a connection of companies or multiple parties, multiple entities, or connection of teams. Let's start with teams, and then maybe we build our way up to the company. But how do you tackle that issue? Because it's hard to connect people, and well, it's easier compared to connecting companies. That's a totally different challenge, the way we see it. How are you trying to tackle that side?
Well, this is a really excellent question and reflection, no, that we are doing. I think, in my experience, we can benefit from this trend nowadays that we can be agile and incremental in the approach. No? So I think you might get frustrated when you think, okay, I need to connect my whole corporation to this whole other initiative, and this is like a huge business, no? And maybe this is like running a marathon, no? You need to run mile by mile. Not that I've ever run one, but I know that it happens, no? My own experience, no? When we did this in BBVA, even with the active interest and willingness from the top management, changing a whole corporation culture is not easy thing, no? And so we are when we think about the dynamics or what's happening internally in the organization as a whole and in each of the individuals that are part of the collaboration. First of all, we need to realize that there's a mandate. No? By the way, I'm talking now in something somehow the structure that I present in my own methodology, but I think it really comes from this. First of all, no, what are we trying to achieve as an organization? Or as I call it, what's the strategy around this? What's the vision that we're trying to get? Because we shouldn't be working in anything that is not related to that goal that we all as an organization should achieve. And everybody should contribute to that objective, because that's why we are a single company. You know, we try to be the first bank. We try to be the most beloved hospital services in the community. No, we want, whatever is your own mission, you need to keep that in mind and realize what's the mandate, and then coordinate with all the teams. I mean the CFO, the risk management team, the legal issues, human resources, the business units, and everyone who is involved. See, what can we do to make that happen? Of course, there are many ways to make that happen, but let's make sure that we share the values and the perspective together.
That's like to create some alignment around what the big issue, what the big goal is. Exactly. So that it's on the open and everybody agrees on it.
And also the way that we want to get there. No, are we willing to risk, or how much are we willing to risk, or how much do we want to innovate? What's the rhythm that we want to get in our own innovation process? Do we want to be the first players, or we want to be followers in the game? We are more conservative. Every strategy is okay, as long as you realize that you are doing that and everyone is aligned with that same way of doing it. With this, then you are able to begin testing internally the ways to organize for that, you know? And it doesn't mean that suddenly all your organization will be changed. You can begin with the small experiments and say, okay, let's test, because there's no a unique recipe on how to make this successful, because it depends so much on the people that you have and the culture. So you can begin testing several experiments to see what's the good way for you to collaborate. And with that layer, little by little, you can create a different internal culture. No? And the dynamics of collaboration are at different levels. It's how you collaborate internally with your teams. No, I remember that, we can see that in so many companies, like legal teams are the bad guys and procurements are always putting stones in the road. Well, that happens because dynamics, indicators, responsibilities of the team. So you can work on that and little by little grow the collaboration dynamic.
I think testing it definitely would help on the trust aspect of. But I think it also helps with something else, and that something else is actually, you mentioned it, when we talk about innovation and how to make it happen, when we talk about different departments in the team, typically we don't start talking about CFOs and the risk departments, right? But it just so happened that those were the first two functions that you mentioned. I think one of the reasons for that is, aside trust, once we build trust, one of the key blockages that comes afterwards is the anticipation and the perception of risk. Because sometimes with open innovation, the biggest blockage becomes, okay, we will collaborate, but we have been in this highly operating result-oriented organization, thus the culture change comes into play. Now we will have to operate again, but we operate just as effective as the weakest link. So an organization can assume that they're capable, but they never know what the capabilities of the other party of the collaboration is sometimes. And they immediately took a defensive stance and say, what if they are the weakest link? Then my performance will be affected from the other party's performance. And that creates some sort of risk. I think one of the areas that we need to tackle to make collaboration happen is also to, in a way, de-risk the process, or instill a culture that looks at risk from a different point of view, like risk from a learning opportunity point of view, or risk from a gain point of view, in a way. Because if in investment, higher the risk, higher the return. We're not investing here. In a way we are, but we're not really investing here. In our situation, probably higher the risk, higher the potential outcomes, potential learnings. So that, again, we hint at a certain culture change, a change in the paradigm of looking at certain concepts such as risk, trust, etc. Sorry if I started blabbering here, but what I want to hear is how do you go around in eliminating or redefining risk for different parties on a collaboration scenario?
Well, I think you brought up many interesting points here. No? First of all, when we are talking about the internal risk, that's why it's important to have an agreement of how far we want to go. And I think there's if we say, okay, let's bet this amount of money, no, for this project, here we are taking care of what's important for the company, that we will open the business every day without everything, but we are investing this much into exploring. And so because everybody agrees on that, even the risk compliance legal finance guys, everybody agrees on that, then we won't have or we have the fear under control. We are doing risk management in that sense. No? Second of all is, okay, what will success look like? Well, we know that we will learn, no, at least to confirm where not to go is cheaper than going there and losing much more. Yep. Maybe we have learnings or decisions that we can actively do with more certainty. Like, for example, you can do an experiment to validate if it's better to do this with a startup or do it in our own. As long as you are opening the objectives with the startup and say, hey guys, we want to test this out, no? These experiments work, you know? How far can we go together to make this work? What doesn't work is not being transparent in the objectives at the end, because it kills the relationship. First of all, the objectives and what do we define risk. Second is how do we define success together? And then how do we measure it? That is not eliminating risk, but it's helping us to manage the expectations around it, and also acknowledge, okay, we might get to lose up till this, no, but we will learn this. And that's internal risk management, and I think it's important. Also, in the second dimension of my methodology, I propose an exercise that we dedicate time to understand the dynamics of each of the departments involved. No, what's the objective of the procurement guy? Okay, to get as much or the best negotiation possible for any contract we sign. Or what's the objective of this business guy? Okay, to sell as many whatever of this whatever product. What's the objective? So if we take into account the network of success factors for everyone involved, we can understand what's happening with the dynamics of the relation. And together with the startups as well, we need to be clear, and that came up before, is what are we expecting from this relation? No? And the most common thing that you can see in any kind of collaboration is, if you are just bringing me to learn from what I know without telling me and just saying me a different thing, I don't like to be cheated,
Yeah.
But then we can say, okay, let's sit together and let's learn together. That's a different way, and we will get the same result. So trust gets to be built little by little with results. We know we collaborated, we get this, even if the experiment failed, we say, okay, I like the failure we got here. If we change this, we can do a different outcome. So this is how you build trust.
Yeah. Just to add on that, on the risk factor, I think most of the times when I assess the situations in a post-mortem analysis kind of fashion, if an interaction has been halted due to risk analysis, I usually see from an objective outside view that the risk of not taking action is much higher most of the time, risk of taking action and failing at the end of it. So there was one talk we had with Attila a couple months back, and there was somebody on the press saying pretty similar to what you started with, that 2021 will be the year of digitalization and technology. And our comment was 1980 was the year of digitalization and technology. 2021 is the year of collaboration, actually, and everything that's happening around us shows us that. It's just, in one way, it's a reconfiguration of how we assess risk, how we understand what risk is, etc. Yeah, thank you. It just reminded me of that
And
quote
this
we had
gives
earlier.
fluidity, to the dynamic, because if you are aware that we can collaborate now, test, experiment, reconnect, improve, this gives more dynamic, to the collaboration, and it's not.
Exactly, exactly.
There's a saying, and I think I've seen it in your post as well. Startups are from Venus and corporations are from Mars. I love that expression, especially Venus representing the female form and Mars representing more of the male or the war type of kind of thing. There's a tremendous change in the mindset. There's a tremendous change in the customer demand, and these are shaping lots of dynamics. But they're not singled out, or they're not unconnected. They're all connected. They're leading us to somewhere. We're developing as humans, just like we used to crawl on 4 feet, and then we took the risk to stand up, show the heart and all that breast cage to the world, and that brought visibility. That brought other forms of intelligence, and we grew. So this is a similar kind of a breakthrough in my mind, and we're going through that. And it's gonna change lots of things. New customer demand is talking about sharing economy. We're not used to sharing economy. We used to own things. We used to have a house and a car, and it was ours, and we loved it that much. Now we're talking about sharing, not owning. Even Elon Musk is the popular kid on the block, is saying things like, I will sell everything I own and we will share it. That's a different methodology. That's a different way of thinking. Now, I believe this and open innovation goes hand in hand. It's the new way of dealing with things, new way of thinking about in business life. So it might be a little bold there, but we have spent a lot of time about future of work. I think open innovation is going to change the way of future of work. But in countries like Turkey, let me give you 2 numbers. During the pandemic, the world around 40% could work remotely, especially in the US, much bigger numbers. But in Turkey, it's 21%. Okay, we're not 5%, we're not 3%, but we're 21%. So that means a lot of way to improve, a lot of transition. How do you see this kind of a transition for the Turkish corporations? Because whenever I talk to my corporate friends in the innovation departments, they feel kind of left behind. Maybe it's tough to practice open innovation. How are we going to change this? But I'm telling them it's an international conflict. It's not just for Turkey. How does your experience tell you about this and the transition? Are there any good practices, good corporations, good regions where open innovation is an exemplary for the rest of us? And any experiences, any stories on that side would be valuable.
I like a lot this what you are talking about, because brings so many aspects of the complexity of culture and ways that we work and collaborate. I remember that at BBVA we implemented dynamics to promote remote working. I think it was 2014. And so you could sign up as a team and say, my team will be able to work from home 2 out of 5 days. And there were teams that the manager said, no, I want to have my people here. No? And imagine, I'm talking about 2014. No? It's been already 7 years. And right now, then there's a regulation that, or this virus that makes everyone to be able to work at home. So change is not absolute and it's not instant, but it begins somewhere. And right now it's being so worldwide that somehow we will have it. Maybe before the pandemic, that 20% was 5%.
Yeah.
So we've moved forward. That's one thing. No? The other is that the other thing that helps to this transformation is that it creates real results. So we are not just talking about rainbows and unicorns and, oh, we can be so happy dancing together. Is that this is profitable, and this is a model that works at global scale. Of course, not for everything, because you can't cut your hair from in the internet, but works for many things, and if we do it for the things that are easier to do, this will create culture in time. And sometimes I hear a lot the let's fail fast, no? Have you heard about this?
Yeah.
Let's risk, let's create a culture. I heard, there's this institution created in Mexico. It's called the Failure Institute, founded by Leticia Gasca, and they created the Fuck Up Nights. And it's an amazing experiment. I like a lot talking about failure. I'm also initiating right now an initiative to talk about the shared failure as well, not only the shared success. But she says something in a TED Talk that I advise you to look for. She says it's not fail fast, but fail smart. No? So in all these dynamics, we are not just encouraging everyone to be reckless, but to be to make a conscious decision on what we are learning, what we are changing as a society. And it's the same thing. It's not just everybody to their homes, but let's be smart on what we can transform, what we can begin with doing, and this will create culture little by little. What an active effort of what we are learning, what we are improving, and the real results of and benefits that we are getting. Because cash is the biggest argument. No, if we succeed as a business, everybody will get in, and this has real results. And this is what at the end will create culture as well.
I totally agree with you. And I had the opportunity to talk on another summit, and I mentioned we need smarter KPIs. We need to explain the return on investment on projects that include collaboration and transparency and how it's working. So people like you, I'll put our names beside your name, and people like us with the good practices and based on new data, how these good practices provide a return to the corporation, return to the humanity. That's very important. I think we're going to talk about sustainability, circular economy. We're going to talk about smarter things, and we're going to see lots of things are integrated, lots of dynamics are integrated. We're going to have financial auditing of firms with the impact in mind. And I'm telling you all these things because I'm a dreamer, and these are my dreams, and I don't know when it's going to be realized, maybe 5 years, maybe 50 years, but I think we're going there. And my dream is that we can have a smarter society where we share the value. If you have any projections about open innovation or about the business life, in 5 to 10 years, please feel free to share. Other than that, thank you a lot, and thanks a lot for the time. Thanks a lot for sharing all your experiences with us.
Thank you very much for having me, guys. And maybe as a final thought, I will say that this comes also from a different way of thinking, that we are sharing things that do not decrease by sharing. No, when we share knowledge, we create more knowledge. When we share business opportunities, we create a bigger pie. We don't want just to be like Robin Hood, but being really smart in the way that we can collaborate.
Thank you a lot. And como se dice, thank you, Open Innovation Gods, for this introduction.
Gracias, Attila and Baran.
Thank you, Marisol. It was a pleasure as always.
It was a pleasure.